Sunday morning at Unity of Springfield in Springfield, Missouri, and welcome to all of those here and those on the World Wide Web. We're going to be, this is Paul Day, and we're going to be talking about Q again. This is Paul 2. It's interesting how, like last week, we had, the tables full and everything. Today we get a nice intimate group, and I love how that works. It's so funny how from one Sunday to the next, you just never know.
Everybody's fixing their potluck stuff.
Everybody's fixing their potluck stuff. And if you can get that online, we are having a potluck today along with our town hall meeting.
Yeah.
Right after service today, so that's great. So let's all go ahead and just center ourselves. Let's go ahead and just kind of sit back in your chair and your feet on the floor if that feels comfortable to you. I invite you to close your eyes if that helps you to relax. And just feel the present moment. This moment that is both past, the present, and now. As you are living in oneness and eternity. Feel that grace that's been bestowed upon you and me and all of us. We're alive here. We're here to experience. We're here to feel. We're here to feel the presence of each other, our oneness, our unity, the God inside of us, and to tap into that ever-flowing abundance. You have it. You have it with you all the time. And all you have to do is ask for it. And it's there. And now that we've touched that everlasting wonder that we have, let's open our eyes and just feel the presence of who we are right here, right now. Thank you, God. Amen. Okay, well, good morning. We had a few more coming in here.
It grew.
It grew.
You didn't run everybody off.
If you've been to any of my classes, I kind of like them to be a little bit more informal than maybe other speakers do. But I like for audience participation. And I like the comments that you bring, and because it makes it so much more colorful. And, I do have to say, we have to keep our comments, somewhat concise. Otherwise it overtakes the time, and we're trying to get through 10 quotes today. Last week we got through 5 quotes. So this is going to be a challenge, although much of the class last time was taken out by explaining what Q is. And I think all of us were here last week, probably. Was there anybody not here last week? I thought you were here last week.
I was here the week before.
Oh, okay.
He got the explanation.
Very briefly
He got it the
explain
week before.
What's that?
He got it the week before, because we talked about it the week before when we were supposed to be doing the walk.
That's right. So
Got it.
we went into it. Good.
Okay.
So just very briefly for those of you online, Q is kind of a lost book. I'm just going to put it in simple terms. A lost book that scholars believe existed, that both Matthew and Luke took from, as well as the book of Thomas, that were actually oftentimes the same words or similar words. And there are about 200 verses in the Bible that we call Q, and this has been in the Lost Gospel of Q, which is this book right here, which we're taken from. They condense that down to 84, sometimes put 2 or 3 verses in one quote. And scholars believe that these are probably closer to the actual words that Jesus spoke, more so than many of the other things in the Bible. If you really look at the Bible, hundreds of people wrote parts of or books of the Bible. And so when we think of the Bible as one entity, it's not really that. It's many, 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 many voices. Oftentimes you get contradictions in there. There's a reason for that. You know, one author is saying one thing, another author is saying another. And sometimes they're quite different. But I always really like to go to the Jesus Seminar, and James, you're probably familiar with that, where they've taken about 125 Bible scholars, and from a wide range, everything from being, you know, very conservative to being very liberal, and then many, even some at least, being atheist even. So, and then they kind of vote on what they believe was real and what was not real. You're not going to have any verse in the Bible that's 100% where everybody thinks, yes, it was in the, yes, this is real, or no, it's not real. So we have kind of a, you know, a meter, I guess you would say, as to what we think is real. If you ask the Jesus Seminar about these verses, they wholeheartedly feel like these are more closely what Jesus probably did say, or stories that actually happened. And of course we have to remember too, not everything is meant to be taken literally. When it was written back then, when it was said back then, stories were told, allegory, some things were meant to be taken literally. And so you have a wide range of things that are not supposed to be really looked at in the way that you might think, okay, or they're to get a deeper meaning, okay?
And Q itself means,
Excuse me?
the Q itself means?
Yeah, it comes from the word, it's a German word called Quell, Quelle. I have it in my papers. There was one German scholar back in 1838, I believe it was, who actually started the whole movement as to 1838, Christian Hermann Weiss, Weisse, if you ever want to look that up. But it means, Quell means source, okay? So, Quell, that's where we get the Q, has nothing to do with QAnon.
Good.
So let's go, we're going to be on Q6 today. So I printed off some papers that start on Q6. If you have the big one from last week, just turn to Q6. And this is from Matthew and Luke, two different verses. But interestingly enough, I just noticed it right now. They're both from 4:1-4. So what a coincidence that is. Who wants to read the quote? A volunteer. Elby, hey, thank you, Elby.
Filled with the Holy Spirit, Jesus left the Jordan and was guided into the wilderness. Here he was put to the test by the devil for 40 days. During that time he fasted, and when it was over, he was very hungry. Then the devil said to him, "If you are God's son, turn this stone into a loaf of bread." But Jesus replied, "Scripture says, people cannot live on bread alone."
Great, thank you, Elby. Okay. I take a look at this story and this quote, and I go, okay, you know, can we actually look at that literally? You know, where did this, you know, how might this have come about? How might this story come about? Do you think there was a scribe following Jesus around and he saw, oh, there's the devil, and, you know, he's testing, you know, Jesus, and starts writing down all that he sees, you know? How might this have come about? I'm just gonna say, I can't take
He
this.
would have had to tell somebody.
What's that?
I said if he was by himself, he would have had to just
Yeah.
have told his disciples that
Yeah.
this was what happened to him when he was in the wilderness.
Yeah, okay. Can we take, now a lot of people in the Christian religion can take Satan or the devil as literal. How might we look at that, being in unity,
Maybe the ego?
just a second.
There you go.
Yeah, this is for the
Just
world
because
wide
the,
web.
yeah, so that
right.
they can read it.
Well, this is a kind of a guess, but maybe the ego.
Exactly, and that's how I look at it as also, because everything is really, internal, when it comes to, go ahead, James, yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, so we have Satan and the devil here, but those
Yeah.
are two different entities.
That's a good point.
So
Okay.
Satan is the Satan in the Hebrew scriptures, which was a part of the it was part of the pantheon, the
Okay.
Semitic pantheon. And so, like in Job, you have the Satan going up to the Elohim, which is sort of like all of the pantheon, saying, "Hey, this guy Job,
Yeah.
he's a righteous man." But the temptation, but also the temptation to like turn away from the pantheon.
Yeah.
But then also there is the accuser. That's what the Satan is. Whereas the tempter is a little bit different in the Christian scriptures. So like,
Yeah.
and I know that we often equate them all.
I do. I know
But
that.
and then same way with Lucifer. So the idea of Lucifer, that was a Babylonian king.
Okay.
That was a very symbolic sort of
Yeah.
narrative in the book of Isaiah.
Yeah.
And it was there. None of those three things are the same thing.
Okay.
Kind of like how the representation of deity in the Bible, we always think of it as this one homogenized thing, but it's not. It's multiple different traditional understandings of deity. So I do think it's important to point that out, because I think even in Unity we sort of homogenize it as, oh, it's just this one thing, but it was never one thing. So
That's what I love about this. I love that you were able to say something there that probably none of us really, or at least I didn't know anyway. I'm assuming, broadly speaking, that most people don't know.
Oh.
And thank you so much
yeah.
for pointing that out. I know a couple of years ago I read, that's been more than a couple of years, time flies by, but how the concept of hell was not even part of Jewish thought until they were kicked out of Israel and had to spend time in Babylonia. And then they took the concept of Hades, actually comes from the Zoroastrian religion, and then they adopted that. So hell's not original. Not in the Christian religion, not in the Jewish religion, I should say. So it's I love history, and I love how we can look at that, and it gives us a little bit deeper perspective on this, and I would have not thought differently.
I think it kind of takes the edge off of the narrative a little bit too, when we can recontextualize and say, wait a minute, this is the way these people were thinking about it. And I mean, you can clearly see when the different words were used, oh, that's what they're talking about.
Yeah.
The Satan is the accuser, like in the book of Job, or they were talking about that king. So anyway, we have a lot of quotes.
Go ahead. Yeah. Hang on just a second.
Yeah, sorry.
Wait for the mic.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about the part where he has taken himself away from society and everything, and really he's putting himself in that situation. And who hasn't?
Yeah.
Who hasn't? When we try to come to that point, our body, our mind is going to want us to go right back to what is normal, or what we know.
Yeah,
If that-
exactly. We can
and
only
he's
build
trying to
on
get
the
past
experiences.
that.
Yes.
Right? So
Yeah.
I just think that going away, and then
Yes.
those thoughts come in really.
What does 40 days represent in the Bible?
A significant period of time.
Great. Thank you. And that's just it. It's,
Long enough for self-doubt.
it's a time of testing and trial and renewal. And
Right.
so we can't take, again, in this story here, it says 40 days, but And that's another thing where you just can't take everything literally. You have to kind of read into it. And that was, you know, it's like the number 7 in the Bible, right? Jesus, you know, someone asked Jesus, how many times do I need to forgive? And he said 7 times 7, or I've heard 7 times 70. That is not to be taken literally 7 times 7, 49 times, you know, no. That is just it's a period of ongoing, okay? So anyway, just a little bit of history there. If you look at the historical on this one, it says visitors to modern day Israel will still find a sun-scorched region going from the Jerusalem to the Dead Sea. This is where they believe that Jesus went into the wilderness. And it says people cannot live by bread alone. Spirit that dwells inside, which is the most important. We have our physical needs, and then we most especially have our spiritual needs. Okay, that's what historically, if you were to ask a scholar what this might have meant, this is what historically they would say. Metaphysically, okay, this is, we're taking unity, we're taking new thought, and we are kind of putting our, interpretation on that. Tempted is anything that causes us to think, feel, or act as if we were separate and apart from God. Okay, and then we already went into the devil and the Satan here. James explained some of that history behind it.
Paul?
Yeah, go ahead, Kim. One sec.
So I was thinking about Satan and the fasting and stuff. You probably all have had experiences where you're aware of the voice in your head talking all the time that isn't really like your higher being seeing,
Right.
that's watching that voice chatter. And that's kind of a separate self that I would say is, to me, often when it talks about Satan as something that you're. Anyway, it was actually a question. So, does it say anywhere that fasting in Jesus' words actually meant food? Because no matter what he did, if he was out alone and cut away from all of this outer stimulus and working on, anytime we fast for Lent or for any reason that you deliberately and consciously give something up for a period, it helps you be more aware and stay in a better state.
It does.
Is there anywhere where it actually says that was food fasting actually?
It's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that. One thing that I do know is I used to fast on a regular basis. I would fast one 36-hour period every 2 weeks. And that goes back to kind of a yoga tradition. And it does change the mind. There's no question about it. I have not done it, but I've had friends who literally took, what was taken in the Bible here for 40 days and actually did fast for 40 days. Not without water, but without food. And, they're, just them telling that experience. So I'm taking it, literally that, when it said fasted, I'm assuming that, yes, it probably did. And it is a spiritual renewal. And it's something that is a tradition, is a discipline in many traditions. But that's about as deep as I can get with it. Any comment on that?
I know I lived in New York City, and there were 2 Jewish ladies that I worked with, and when they were fasting, nothing could pass through their lips. So the hardest thing for them was they were both smokers. And you couldn't smoke because it couldn't pass through your lips.
Well, I would think that'd be a really hard one for
And
someone.
that was the hardest thing for them. But their fasting to them was without food or without.
Yeah.
And on the wilderness thing, when you're in Israel, they have a tour that goes out into the wilderness, and you see the monastery from across a canyon a long way off, and that supposedly, because everywhere Jesus was in Israel, there's a church built.
Yeah.
You know, everything that happened, there's a church.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a monastery there, and it is totally desolate out there.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing out there except the con artist trying to sell you stuff.
Okay.
Which I'm stuff. Yeah.
Rick, did you have a comment? Hang on 1 second before. And then we got to move on because we're going to try and get through some of these quotes here. So.
Well, I think numbers, like people were listening to these stories. You know, they weren't written down, and they probably like numbers.
Yeah.
Probably, this is my own. They probably meant something to the ancient mind.
Right.
Number 12 and 40. I don't know. For me, I got 4. Which is the number of stability, like
Okay.
a square, you build it, and then 0.
Yeah.
0 is the hero. 0 is the fool. So I don't know, with Jesus, out of 40, he's sort of this wandering, just going out there in the desert with whatever, his little shawl or whatever. And there's sort of stability and the fool kind of connected.
Okay. All right.
Thought I'd throw that out there for. All right, thanks.
And I think you could take it even a little. Maybe he did go out for 40 days. And then, you know, whether he did or whether he didn't, it was a long time and it changed him. Let's go to Q7. We need a volunteer. Oh, Rachel, thank you.
Are we just reading the quote?
Yeah, just read the quote, yeah.
All right. Then the devil took Jesus to Jerusalem and made him stand at the top of the temple. To prove you are God's son, he said to him, jump down from here. And remember, it is written, he will send his angels to guard you and to catch you in their hands, so you won't even hit your foot on a stone. Jesus answered him, it has been said, you must not put God to the test.
Okay, great. Does that mean that we can't grow toes? Oh, I had to throw that out, I'm sorry. We must not put God to the test. Okay. Again, is this something that we could take literally? Is this something that, you know, Jesus was telling his followers? You know, how might this quote come about? You know, what? Okay. Let's look at historical then. Sitting atop it in okay, I'm not going to read that. Okay, the temple was huge, okay? They say it covered 35 acres, and one historian said it was 200 feet tall. That's pretty good sized building, right? And if you look at the wall that just exists there today, that's just the foundation of this thing, you know. But it was huge, and so, you know, if you went up to the top of it, as one person would say, Josephus effect said, you know, it would make you dizzy to be at the top. So, you know, the devil is testing Jesus, right? And so, again, we have to, I at least have to feel like, we're talking about the temptations, okay? Was there actually a devil that was tempting Jesus, or how do we look at the devil again?
Ego.
Ego, thank you.
She had her hand up. Did you want to add to that?
Yeah, when I was reading that, we were just talking about like in the Untethered Soul, the inner roommate.
Yeah.
And for me, like my inner, well, I feel like I have multiple inner roommates, but but in addition to one that's like, you know, very like negative, there's one that's very like, you know, wants to get on to like justified anger, to like prove myself or whatever. And so when I read this, I kind of think about like, I mean, it's kind of like pride, you know, like, or wanting to like take risks to prove that you're, you know, chosen or you are protected or whatever.
Yeah.
But I feel like it kind of reminds me of like, you know, the devil is the ego, and that can take different forms as the inner roommate to kind of like tempt you to get away from being in like love and tolerance to being more in like self and like what can I do for me? How can I prove that I'm, you know, whatever.
Yeah,
That
thank
makes
you
any
very
sense.
much for that.
Jump from that.
Yeah, I just, you know, his quote comes from Psalm 91.
Okay,
And
that's interesting. Thank you for saying that.
yeah,
Okay.
and so it's from Psalm 91, and so it's just another example if you take something out of context.
Yeah.
And really, you know, in the context of Psalm 91, it's, you know, protecting you, and so it is the you know, the protection psalm. But I think really metaphysically there is it's our own stumbling blocks, and God will protect you if we stay close to Him and seek Him. So
You know, just taking off from what you said there, a lot of the things that Jesus or other people in the New Testament are quoted as saying, and maybe outside of Q, they're actually quotes that are taken from the Old Testament or reference from the Old Testament. And whether that was to make Jesus the Messiah or, you know, just that fulfilling of the law, whatever, it's really interesting, you know, that this came from that, and I didn't know that. Thank you for pointing that out. So, and one thing I'm going to say just real quickly, because we all have this conversation going on in our head pretty much all the time, don't we? And a lot of times I try to think, well, how do I differentiate what's the ego and what is maybe God speaking to me, you know? And I try and, okay, so I want to try and figure out how is it that is more towards a godly sense than it is towards my own ego. And so all I can do is I can take what I would consider to be, in my opinion, the attributes of what God would be, right? So we have love, we have compassion, and kindness, patience, and hundreds of other, you know, adjectives there. And then I can take what I believe might be the feelings of what the ego is. And what would that be? You know, that would be impatience, hatred, condemnation, retribution, and so on. And so I can write these down, but I have them kind of categorized in my head. And so if I'm feeling one way or another, I can kind of go, okay, I feel like I'm really in my ego, which we are most of the time. But we can guide ourselves. And I think that's what Charles and Myrtle were talking about when they were saying the denials and the affirmations, okay? To me, that's the foundation of unity, is that we are taught how to use denials or affirmations or the affirmations. And so we want to affirm those attributes of God, and we want to deny those ego thoughts. That's how, I mean, that's a simple, that's just how I do it. Go ahead, Elby.
I go by feel, because your body is connected to your heart, and it knows. If you get in your head, you just get confused. But you can feel. Does it feel open and expansive, or does it feel contracted? Does it feel blissful and good, or does it feel? And if you don't know, sit with it, and your body will tell you what's true, because it can feel, it knows. But we are so used to being in our head that we don't get into our feel.
Yeah, thank you. I like it also, we could use intuition, right? You know, we could, and maybe that's a little bit closer to feel. I think the problem is with any of this is that our mind, we can trick ourselves into believing that our ego is God. And you see that so often. You can see it in other people. It's hard to see it yourself.
We have a cutout over here too.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just want to say that we never know how much growth we've experienced until we're faced with the heat of the moment.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, thank you. We're gonna have to keep moving. Let's go to 8. Need a volunteer for 8, please? Oh, I'm sorry, I've got.
Close, get it.
Oh, okay.
To read 8.
Then taking him to a high mountain, the devil showed Jesus in an instant the empires of the world. I will give you the power and glory of these kingdoms, for it is mine. I can give it to anyone I want. All you have to do is worship me. Jesus retorted, "Get behind me, Satan. It is written, you must worship God and serve him alone." Having exhausted all of these ways of tempting Jesus, the devil left him. To return at a later time, angels came and served him.
Wow. This is, again, temptations of Jesus, but I looked at one quote there and it just struck me. And that was, well, get behind me, Satan. It is written, you must worship God and serve him alone. How many times, at least in my life, have we been beaten with it? We have to worship Jesus. And here is Jesus saying, you must worship God and serve him alone. Okay. That just really struck me when I read it, and I've read it 100 times, But here in Unity, we don't necessarily, we look at Jesus as our just inspired teacher, right? But we don't really put him quite on that pedestal that's the same as God. And so I think this quote is kind of, we could take this in Unity and go, yeah, I'll look at this.
I will say that Jesus is a savior. It has occurred to me in my growing up in a Christian thing and getting in this church, and one day I realized if we all are one, and if a person came, and I always think of a gallon of water with a drop of dye in it, does the whole thing. And so we're all affecting each other all the time.
Right.
And he came and was so pure in his approach to life and his remembering his devotion to God and stuff, and he took on so much hate and abuse from that consciousness. That consciousness interpenetrated the entire soup of consciousness that we all are one with. So in fact, that did do a thing for all of us. And that helps people that have a problem with we're not all about the redemption thing.
Yeah. So, in your opinion, is there a personal God? Or is God impersonal?
What'd you say?
Both, yeah.
That's like my opinion, yes.
Go ahead.
Well, I can't remember who did it might have been you, maybe. Someone did the sermon about, the Trinity and how there's, the Holy Spirit, and then there's, a relationship. So the Holy Spirit's kind of like the God within you. Jesus is, a relationship God. And then, God, or, the Father is kind of like the universe or source or something.
Wow. Perfect. That's great.
Is that you?
That was me.
Okay. Yeah. I really liked that sermon, so.
I think it all depends. It's when it comes to God
Uh-huh.
and things like that, it's very personal.
Yeah.
Because one person's view of God may be different than the next.
Yeah.
I'm a big universe guy.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, I don't call it God, but I'm not putting anybody else down that does call it God or goddess or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But like with me, I look at it as the universe, and we're all a part of that.
Yeah.
So what you do, again, kind of like the deal with the dye in the jug of water, what you do affects everything else.
Yeah. Thank you. I have to believe that in order for us to feel God inside of us, we have to have it personal. And at the same time, there has to be that infinity that is so impersonal, that showers down that love
Yes. And grace.
everywhere. To grace no matter who it might be, or inanimate objects, animate objects, just whatever. So I believe in those, and your answer is phenomenal. Thank you, Brenda. Just there you go.
Here you go, Brenda.
The purple version book of the A Course of Miracles, it explains that a whole lot better than the older versions of the Course of Miracles.
Good, thank you, Brenda.
And I would advise anybody that is interested in the Course of Miracles, get the purple book.
Thanks, Brenda. I love the purple version too. It's kind of the original version of Course in Miracles. Okay, any other thoughts? Otherwise, we're going to move on to 9. I'm trying to get through these.
Did you say the purple book is the original?
It is, yeah. Yeah, it's more of the unedited. Kenneth Wapnick and what's her name? The author?
Marianne Williams?
No. Marianne Williams wrote a book on Course in Miracles. She wasn't the author. She was a psychologist and
Helen.
Yeah. So anyway, the two of them kind of edited the original writings to what more like what they wanted it to be. But the purple book is actually the original writings and commentary in it too. So let's go on to Q9. We need a volunteer, Rick. Okay, go ahead. You got it.
Around this time, Jesus went out into the hills seeking solitude and spent the entire night in prayer. At daybreak, he came down to his disciples. Great crowd of people from all parts of Judea, Jerusalem, and the coastal region of Tyre.
Yeah, I don't know how to say it.
And Sidon had come to hear him and be cured of their diseases. Fixing his eyes on his disciples, he began to speak. Fortunate are you who are poor in spirit, for yours is the realm of God.
Yeah, is the realm of God. Correct. Thank you. I know there's a typo there.
Oh, that's supposed to be it.
Yeah, it's, for yours is the realm of God. This is one of my favorite beatitudes. Fortunate are you who are poor in spirit. It's a hard one to understand. And the way that I understood this, the easiest for me is there's a college in Wales. In fact, it's called University of Wales, I believe. And they're the only school in all the world who has a doctorate degree in I'm trying to think. Mystical studies. Okay, so and I love mysticism. The whole thing. Every religion has its mystics, right? And so there are people that go in deeper. So in this department of the mystical studies, they did do a study on how was it that you could more quickly get to that revelation of God, okay? And the number one way to get to that revelation was to be at the bottom of the barrel, okay?
Yeah.
You are so desperate that all you can do is cry out for help. And that was the quickest way to get to God. I thought that was really interesting. And so that's how I look at it. Fortunate are you who are poor in spirit, for yours is the realm of God. Now, there were other ways to get there too. Meditation was one of them. I can't remember what. There were about 10 that, caught my attention. But it was huge. That bottom of the barrel was by far the quickest way.
Which is probably why we came to this planet.
Yes, I love that.
Because there's so many things that
Yeah.
throw us down there
Yeah.
in the bottom of the barrel,
Yeah.
every now and then through our lives.
Well, think about it for yourselves, for you personally, and I can only look at what happened for me. What was your bottom of the barrel? What was your reason for really wanting to learn, wanting to feel that absolute depth of spirituality?
the greatest invention of the greatest invention of what am I trying to say? Greatest invention of, or I guess of invention, is actually desperation. Because to be desperate, or sometimes to get rid of ego, I don't know about everybody else, but like with me, to get rid of my own ego at times, the universe had to place me in certain places for me to actually pay attention or to learn.
Yeah. You know,
I think there's a better way of saying what you said.
For years, I've heard people go, I don't get it. How is being poor in spirit? How
Your
is
last
that?
paragraph says it.
Oh, it does.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, okay, good. Hear all this writing and everything. I forget what was saying.
The last paragraph.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, growing up, I heard a study that was basically saying what you said.
Okay.
It was that people who are in poverty are more likely to be Pentecostal or the branches of Christianity that are more out there, right?
Yeah.
So I grew up in a Pentecostal church, and we were the poor people. It's still in Springfield, the church I grew up in. It's over on the north side. It's filled with the poorer congregation.
Right.
But when you don't have money and all those things to cling on to, it's really cool to step into a church that's super Holy Spirit filled, because you need that more, the bottom of the barrel thing.
Okay, thank you. My grandparents on one of my father's side were Pentecostal, and I went to a Pentecostal church when I was in town.
Wow.
About once a month or so. So I definitely understand what you're saying there. Go ahead.
It's a form of dropping the ego too.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to move us along because we're running out of time here. Let's go to 10. Need a volunteer? Rick, did you want to read that?
Well, that's a short one. A voice like mine is a really long.
Okay. Get over yourself, Rick.
Everybody go.
All right. Happy are you who hunger and thirst for righteousness now, you shall be satisfied. Happy are you who weep now, for you shall laugh.
Okay.
Whether it's long or short.
I don't have a whole lot of commentary on this one here. Anybody want to give a comment on this?
Well, I read it. They're
Go ahead,
better.
again.
I think he was first.
Well, for me, it's a thing of we are all individuals, correct? And so if I thirst for righteousness and then I weep, at the end of it all, I'm going to laugh.
Okay.
Because really, it's just a big game, and we're all here to play.
Okay. I love playing. Oh my God.
Oh, her, and then
Go ahead. You can read the comments that I had here from historical and metaphysical. Again, that's,
I'm going to take just a little bit different perspective.
that's what we want.
When we open ourselves up to our emotions instead of making them our enemy, and I have done that. I have said, I'm never crying again, which don't do that.
Yeah.
You'll get things to cry about.
Yes. Yeah.
But when I allow myself to grieve over a loss, it means that, especially, another human being, I've recently lost my mother. And I didn't lose her. I know where she is. But she transitioned. So, but allowing myself to really grieve and cry, a couple of things. It really tuned into how much I loved her. And so sometimes the pain is the touchstone for the depth of where we went with another person. And so I think we can do that with God too, as we search for Him. And I think that we need to always be seekers, because, and there will be the relief, there will be the laughing, there will be the dancing, because we have loved.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That was beautiful. Go ahead.
Well, referring back to the last one and this one, I think those times in our lives when we hit bottom are the blessings, even though at the moment when we're going through them, we're sure not aware of it. And you asked, like, what was your big, last time you asked what was your big deal, and I mean, I feel like I've had several big deals in my lifetime. In my adult life, it was going to prison, you know, and with this thing, it says, those of you that weep, you'll laugh later. The first week I was there, I cried all week. And it was a nice prison. There wasn't any miserable killers or anybody like that there. One lady who killed her brother-in-law in a bar fight. But so it was no big deal, but I was terrified and I felt awful and had to leave my kids behind, and you know, and after a week of that, and finally realizing I was safe there, a week of that crying and freaking out, I sat down with a lady and she was teaching me to crochet, and I told her, I said, you know, I feel like I'm on vacation. And
wow, what a turnaround of the mind.
Yeah, and she said, shh, don't tell anybody. But, you know, then it became about laughing and having fun while I was there.
Yeah.
And I had a pretty good time, most of it.
Oh.
I just, for me, happy are you who hunger and thirst for righteousness now, you shall be satisfied. For you weep now, you shall laugh. It's another reference to the pendulum swing, the rhythm of the universe, the highs and the lows. This too shall pass.
That's a beautiful way of looking at it.
Yeah. Well, and they're proving that laughter is the best medicine now.
Right.
What is the best medicine?
Laughter.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
Get oxygen to the brain, all kinds of good things. Yeah.
You know, I don't know why I thought about it this morning, and I told Sue, and she goes, oh no, not another one of your great ideas. But I said, I'm going to do a talk. My next talk is going to be humor in the Bible, because you don't think about that. And humor back then was different than it is now too. So it's something that I want to learn, and I just think it'd be, you know, very, very interesting to.
Maybe we can work it in with the laughter workshop.
Okay, there you go. All right. The next one, Q11, it's a very long one. Who wants to read this? Extremely long. Pat.
Fortunate are the gentle, for they shall inherit the earth.
Okay. Thank you. And Mike.
That's it.
I don't read the rest of it, huh?
No. That was it.
Okay, the teacher just asked.
There's not a whole lot of commentary here, and I put the historical and the metaphysical together. And this is considered the most famous passage in the Sermon on the Mount. And it's translated to the meek shall inherit the earth. And then we have the Greek word, and I'm saying it, protes, meaning gentle but strong. And I think that changes it a whole lot to me. Gentle but strong, you're firm. And that's what I like to say in my affirmations. Gentle yet strong, gentle yet firm. Giving strength.
Knowing your power and using it wisely.
Very good. Thank you, James.
You don't have to be tough, if you know.
You don't. No. And those people, you can feel it in those people who are that way. You know, I look at Mary in the church, and when she's handling tough situations, she doesn't get angry. She remains very calm, and yet, damn, is she firm. And I love that. And what a good example of this quote. Anyway, so, Mary, if you're there, we just complimented you. Okay. Anybody want to comment on that? Otherwise, we'll move on because our time is running short.
Just think of Gandhi and Jesus.
Okay.
They feel so powerful.
I love that. Yeah.
Anybody that ever fought a cause that changed the world, when you think about their countenance and you feel that, they almost always feel like a dignified, almost silent presence that when they spoke, it'd be like a sentence and it would just blow everybody away, bring everybody together, blow everybody away, you know, and they were defined in one sentence or one line often, a lot of them, and Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, all of them. You always, I personally always think of them as, see them as this really strong, just stalwart stone of a strong human, but just the most gentle, pure, all-embracing love present.
Thank you.
I have one really quick thing to say about inherit the earth, because this is the one that I always had the hardest time with. Is like, you know, people with guns are inheriting the earth. That's what it seemed like to me. But then it was those people like Buddha and Jesus and Muhammad and those people who demonstrated meekness. And look, thousands of years later, we're still talking about it. Clearly, they inherited something. And so that was how I reconciled that idea that the meek or the gentle will inherit the earth. So.
Thank you for saying that. I love that. Okay, Q12. Volunteer. We need voices. Thank you for.
Happy are the merciful, for they shall be shown mercy. Happy are the pure in heart, for they shall see the face of God. Fortunate are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God.
Okay.
That's what we just said.
Yeah. Trying to think. How does? Go ahead, Elby.
There is a big difference between peacemakers and peacekeepers.
Okay. Love that. Okay.
Well, for the first line, I mean, it also kind of reminds me of the Lord's Prayer, where it's like, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Like, it's kind of like we have to forgive others to be forgiven ourselves. And then it's also kind of the idea that, like, your resentments are only hurting you, you know? Like, once you let go of those resentments, then you can free up energy and, like, get a better connection to God, and that those resentments really just kind of block your connection with God. And then with the pure of heart, I almost think of like, the first thing that came to my mind was kind of like, throughout history, sometimes it's a lot more about the heart than the mind. Like in ancient Egypt, they would have, like, they'd weigh your heart, you know, and if your heart's as light as a feather, I think then it was good. And I don't know, I've read a lot of things about how, you know, being pure in heart and not having a heavy heart is really important for kind of like connection with a higher power. Yeah, that's kind of what I like.
Love that. Any other comments on this? I did put these down. You can take these home and look at them a little bit later. To me, I think, again, this is kind of the foundation of Jesus, and you know, all these quotes are. So, and you can kind of see, you know, from what we put on, what I put on there with metaphysical. I'm trying to tie in new thought to the quote also. Okay. Again, for time, I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead to just a second. I might just jump. Let's go to Q16. That'd be on the last page, because of the time. I want to jump to this because to me this is one of the most, if not the most important of all. Okay, go ahead.
Treat people as you would like them to treat you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do the same. If you do good only to those who do good to you, what merit is there in that? Even sinners do that. And if you lend to those from whom you hope to receive, what reward is there in that? Even sinners lend to sinners. Instead, love your enemies and do good, expecting nothing in return. You will have a great reward, and you will be children of your Father in heaven. He makes the sun rise on the bad and the good. He sends rain to fall on both the just and the unjust.
Good, thank you so much. And of course, we know this as what?
Golden rule.
The golden rule. This is the golden rule. If you look at any of the major religions, especially, and I would say probably almost all religions, the golden rule is, paramount. Okay, and if we did nothing else in our lives, if we could perfect this one, we would have it. We would be saints, because that's the way that the only thing in goodness is to treat others as you would want to be treated yourself. That's my opinion. Anybody else have any comments on that? And then we're gonna I'll end it with a story about this.
I don't always have, maybe it's going back to that poor in spirit. I don't always have what it takes because I can justify my anger or whatever. And so for me, it's connecting with God, because sometimes that gives me the time, the energy, the power, that will allow me to do that. Yeah. So I think, to me, I mean, if I stay close to God and do His work well, then this flows from that. So I think, to me, it's an integral piece to stay close to God, or else I'm going to fall so short.
Thank you. All right, because we only have 3 minutes left, I'm going to give you a quick story. There was a rabbi that lived at the same time as Jesus. Okay, this guy was named Rabbi Hillel. Have anybody heard of Rabbi Hillel? He's kind of popular amongst the Jewish crowd. But there's a story. It's just a story, but the quote is actually real. Okay, so this guy, this non-believer, comes up to Rabbi Hillel and he goes, "If you can stand on one leg and tell me the essence of Judaism while standing on your one leg, I will follow you and follow Judaism." So Rabbi Hillel stands on one leg and he goes, "That which is hateful to you, do not do unto your fellow. That is the whole Torah. The rest is commentary. Now go and learn." And I love that because it is. It's the essence of all religions, in my book anyway. If you can treat others as you want to be treated yourself. So, with that, I'm going to end the quotes for today. We're going to do the next 10 quotes. It'll be 17 through 27 next week. And then I'm going to cut it off. There are 84 quotes. If you ever do want to go to the Lost Gospel, they're in here. I'm the one who wrote the historical and the metaphysical, and I just took those out of the metaphysical Bible from Unity. And then I went online and kind of looked up a little bit of historical stuff. So this is my commentary, but the quotes are coming from the book here. So with that, James, you're passing around the basket?
Yes.
Okay.
And if you're online and you want to give, you can go to www.unityofspringfield.org.
Okay. Today the lesson is gratefully giving way to the flow, and that's with Sue Baggett Day. And sorry, that wasn't the announcements. Please join us for our quarterly town hall meeting, potluck, immediately following the service. It's going to be in this room, and they're always great. I always love the town hall meetings. So you get to meet people, just so much fun. Zach, you're going to be You're going to be saying meditations tonight at 6. Open to everyone.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. The monthly Unity Men's Group and Potluck is this Tuesday. Actually, Tuesday, May 7th at 6 p.m. All men are welcome to join. Bring a dish to share, and those are fun, if you're a guy. Chair yoga is every Thursday at 9 a.m. Everyone's welcome, and the cost is $8. Next Sunday at 9:15, we're doing the same class as I just said, the quotes 17 through 27. And again, I'll bring the papers. You're welcome to take these home and look at them. And if you have any comments about maybe even on stuff that we didn't cover today, feel free. We can talk about that next week. Today is the last day to sign up for Prosperity Plus 3. Starting May 19th, Amy Burnett will facilitate this 7-week program created by Mary Morrissey. The cost is $60. this Friday at May 10th, 7 p.m. is the Ladies of Unity Banquet. The theme is the many hats we wear. The cost is free, just bring a side dish or dessert. There's limited seating, so please RSVP either online or in the foyer. Well, it's amazing how many things we have potlucks about. Just in the next week. You could be filled for a long time just coming to our stuff. The Women's Spring Fashion Boutique is Friday, May 17th and Saturday, May 18th. You can drop your donations off the week of the sale. Stephanie Martin. If you haven't seen Stephanie, boy, is she a wonder. She's an RN, medium, and spiritual teacher, and she'll hold a workshop called Talk to Your Angels, Loved Ones and Spirit Guides on May 18th, 1 p.m. You can sign up on our website or out in the foyer, and it's $25. And last of all, on Saturday, June 1st at 11:30 a.m., we'll be having a volunteer appreciation celebration. And if you've donated your time, talent, or treasure to this church, which I know most of you have, we hope you'll attend and be celebrated. So that's it, and let's take the time and get back in a circle.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks.